Hey, let me ask you something right off the bat. Would you bring Tyron Smith back to the Cowboys? Yeah, I know. Just hearing his name brings back a lot of memories. Tyron was once the most dominant left tackle in football, but let's be real. That was a few years ago. Today, the question isn't just about nostalgia, it's about strategy. Here's what's being floated. Some insiders are suggesting that Tyron could return to Dallas, not as a guaranteed starter, but as a veteran insurance policy. A safety net in case things go south with Tyler Smith or Terrence Steele. And I gotta say, that idea is not entirely out of the question. Tyron was playing decent football before he got hurt last season. Not elite, but solid. Still, the concern is his durability. How much does he have left in the tank? And more importantly, does he want to keep going? It's no secret that guys at this stage of their careers usually don't want to fight for a backup role on a cheap contract. That's why a move like this would probably happen late in the offseason, maybe even post-draft. Now let's talk lineup. Right now, Tyler Smith is your starting left tackle, and Terrence Steele holds the right side. Behind them? Well, let's just say there's not a ton of depth. You've got guys like Asim Richards, Matt Waletzko, and Earl Bostic, but none of them have proven they can hold it down if something goes wrong. That's where bringing back Tyron makes some sense. Even as a backup, he'd raise the floor of this offensive line group instantly. And honestly, what better mentor could you ask for to guide Tyler Smith in his development? But of course, everything comes down to dollars and cents. A one-year deal would need to be cheap enough not to impact the Cowboys' compensatory pick formula. That's a big factor for this front office. Now it's your turn. Drop your opinion in the comments. Would you bring Tyron Smith back to Dallas as a veteran backup on a cheap deal? Type Y for yes or N for no below. I'm curious to see what side you're on. All right, now let's shift gears a bit, because there's another name stirring the pot, and this one comes with even more buzz. All right, let me throw another name at you, Stefon Diggs. Now tell me this, Diggs on the Cowboys, dream come true or a risky move waiting to happen? Vote right now in the comments. D for dream, R for risk. Lately, there's been a wave of speculation around Stefon possibly landing in Dallas. And yeah, I get it. The idea of him lining up opposite CeeDee Lamb has fans fired up. But let's take a step back and look at the full picture. First off, it's worth noting that Stefon recently visited the Patriots facility, and that visit raised some red flags, not just about his interest, but about his medical status. Remember, he's coming off a season clouded by whispers of knee issues after that ACL scare. Nothing confirmed, but where there's smoke, and man, Cowboys fans have seen this movie before, signing big names with injury history that just don't pan out. You know what I'm talking about. Still, there's another factor that makes this rumor catch fire. Stefon Diggs. Having his brother in the locker room could be a huge pull for Stefon, and honestly, that kind of family chemistry isn't something you can coach. But the question is, does the front office see this as a strategic move or just fan service noise? Because let's talk logistics. Stefon's contract expectations are still high. Even if Buffalo agrees to a trade or release, Dallas would have to offer a deal that fits within their tight cap space, and it could mess with the comp pick formula again. That's not something Will McClay and the front office take lightly. So while it's a fun scenario to imagine, the reality is a lot trickier. And honestly, the team might prefer to target a younger wideout in the draft, where value meets long-term upside. But hey, that's just one angle. I want to hear from you. Would you take a shot on Stefon Diggs if he came for around $3.5 million per year? Let me know in the comments below, yes or no. Drop your take, I'll be reading every one of them. And speaking of wide receivers, let's dive deeper into what the Cowboys are actually planning for that position group, because it's not just about names, it's about strategy. All right? Now we've been talking about big names and big moves, but let's get into something more pressing, the Cowboys' wide receiver situation. You know it's been a topic of concern, especially after last season. It's CeeDee Lamb, and a lot of question marks after that. So what's the move here? How are the Cowboys going to bring in help for Dak Prescott and keep the offense rolling? Here's what we're looking at. Draft. It's the most straightforward solution, and it's what a lot of people are predicting. There are some pretty talented wide receivers out there in the first and second rounds, with guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison being potential fits for the Cowboys. But we know how the draft goes, right? It's not always as easy as plug and play. The draft is a gamble, especially when you're trying to secure a true impact player. Then there's the trade route. Rumors are swirling, and while we don't have specifics, don't be surprised if the Cowboys make a move for a solid veteran receiver, maybe someone who's been in the league for a few years and could provide that immediate spark. I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that possibility in a future video, but keep that one in your mind for now. But don't count out free agency. Yeah, I know the free agent market isn't exactly overflowing with studs this year, but you never know. Players like DJ Chark or Jarvis Landry could provide a short-term solution while giving the Cowboys time to develop a younger option. But let's be real. Signing an older free agent doesn't come without risk, especially when the cost could be higher than expected. So here's where I need you to step in. What's your ideal strategy? How should the Cowboys go about strengthening the wide receiver group? Should they go for a high-risk, high-reward veteran in free agency, make a trade, or lean into the draft to get a young playmaker? Let me know in the comments. D for draft, T for trade, F for free agency. I'm curious to see how you all would approach this. And now, shifting gears again, let's talk about a quarterback rumor that's got some people scratching their heads. Let me know when you're ready to continue to Chapter 4 by sending C. Você diz, CO, ChatGPT, diz, great. Let's move on to Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Joe Milton to the Cowboys, the truth behind the alleged trade. Approx 370 words. All right, now here's one that got a lot of buzz. Joe Milton to the Dallas Cowboys? You heard that right, the backup quarterback from the New England Patriots. So what's the deal here? Is there any truth to this rumor, or is this just another example of media hype? Let's break it down. The Jeremy Fowler report from ESPN mentioned the Cowboys as a potential suitor for Milton, who is, as you know, a big athletic quarterback. According to Fowler, several teams are interested in trading for him, and he even linked Dallas to the conversation. Now, before you get too excited, let's dig deeper. The key thing to note here is that there was no real confirmation from the Cowboys side. All that was said was that it could be a possibility, but nothing concrete, nothing definitive. Here's what I'm thinking. This is likely just a way to drive up the market for Milton. It's common for media outlets to throw out team names to get the fan base talking. Remember, the Cowboys are always involved in trade rumors, so when you see things like this, you have to take it with a grain of salt. The Cowboys may be keeping an eye on quarterbacks, but I wouldn't hold my breath on Milton coming to Dallas. Now, let's talk about Milton as a player. He's got the size, the mobility, and he can throw a pretty decent deep ball. But the problem? Consistency. Milton has struggled in the preseason, and his numbers don't exactly scream future star. He even had a terrible showing with the Tennessee Titans. You probably remember that 37% pass completion in the preseason. Not exactly what you want to see from a guy you'd consider as a backup. The Patriots reportedly won a third-round pick for Milton. That's right, a third-round pick. Now that's a pretty steep price for someone who still has a lot of proving to do. Would the Cowboys really want to trade a third-round pick for a guy with so many question marks? I'm not sure about that. So now, it's your turn. Would you trade a third-round pick for Joe Milton? Let me know in the comments. S for yes, N for no. With that said, let's keep the focus on improving this team. We've already talked about the offense, but what's the plan for defense? Stay tuned, because we're about to wrap this up with one last look at the big picture for Dallas. All right, let's step back for a moment and take a big picture view of everything we've discussed. We've been diving deep into three major rumors: Tyron Smith's return, Stefon Diggs possibly coming to Dallas, and that Joe Milton trade talk. But the real question is, what does all this mean for the Cowboys heading into 2025? Let's first look at Tyron Smith. Bringing him back could be a smart move for depth on the offensive line, but it would have to be on a cheap contract, and he'd have to accept a backup role. The biggest value here is as a mentor for Tyler Smith and Terrence Steele, but does Tyron want to take that role? That's the question. With the way the Cowboys are shaping their roster, adding a veteran like Tyron could give them stability on the line, but they also need to be careful about the money they spend. Then there's Stefon Diggs. The Cowboys have a serious need at wide receiver, and Diggs could be a solid addition if his health checks out. But the big concerns are the cost and his injury history. Do the Cowboys want to gamble on a guy recovering from an ACL tear? Maybe, but they'd have to weigh the risk of losing a comp pick in the process. It's a tough call, but one that could affect the team's financial flexibility. Finally, Joe Milton. Does Dallas really need another project QB? Sure, he's got the physical tools, but a third-round pick for someone with inconsistent preseason performances? I'm not convinced. The Cowboys should be looking for a reliable backup QB, not just another gamble. So let me ask you, which move makes the most sense for Dallas? Out of the three, which would you prioritize? Would you focus on strengthening the offensive line with Tyron, or do you go after a big-name wide receiver like Diggs? Maybe you think they need a backup QB? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all things Cowboys. We've got more content coming your way, so make sure you're part of the Cowboys News TV family.